welcome to Tallo's Real Careers, Real Journeys. Instead of a presentation today, we will get to explore Joyce's personal career journey. So, you guys also have an important role to play as well. You'll get to vote, react, and decide what happens next today. So, before we get started, we encourage you guys to submit questions for our speaker to answer live today by scanning that QR code that you see or entering that pin at menti.com. So, when you guys think of choosing a career pathway, what matters most to you right now? And remember that there's no wrong answer. So, there's some of the choices that we have. The work seems interesting to me. It's something I could be good at doing. How the career job fits my work-life balance, which I think is the biggest one to pay attention to. So, go ahead and decide what you guys find most important today. I'll give you guys a little bit longer to put in your input. Like I said, I think work-life balance is super important. How much it pays as well. The work seems interesting, of course. It needs to be interesting, right? So that's what is encouraging you to do it. Something I can be good at doing, how much it pays. Awesome. Thank you guys for that. So today, let's go ahead and meet our guest for today's episode. Joyce, can you help us get to know you a little bit more personally?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ansley. Good morning, everyone. I'm Joyce Myers, and I'm here as a Chief Data Officer, but I obviously did not start out that way. Both of my parents were in the Air Force, so I grew up moving all over. Every 3 years, I moved. And so I got to meet a lot of people, see new places. It really helped me not be afraid of change, right? It really helped me embrace new things. And then I joined the Army, much to the dismay of my Air Force parents. And I only joined for three. I joined for 3 years so that the Army could help me pay for college. I stayed for 20 years. I made a career of it. I traveled around the world again. I raised my family and they were able to travel with. As I retired, it's during the Army, I did logistics, right? So how many tanks are in the Army? Who has them? Where are they? Are they broken? Are they fixed? What parts do they need? And realized that that was really all data. And so started to really lean towards how do I solve those problems and answer those questions? I teach yoga. I'm a certified registered yoga teacher because sometimes when your brain's really solving hard problems, you need a way to find that balance in your life, physically as well as emotionally and mentally. I work in the flower garden. Being outside grounds me. I love public speaking, so I'm so happy to be able to talk to you guys today. And really, I think from my background, I just love getting to know people, their backgrounds, their food, their cultures, different experiences. And I think that just really helped lead me to where I am today.
And I think it's also really important how you've been able to find that balance that you mentioned, right? You being a yoga teacher and being able to still enjoy other things outside of your hard career field, right? It's important to find that balance. So I know you touched base on it a little bit, but can you give us a little bit more insight on what a chief data officer is?
Yeah, absolutely. So you hear that title only in this space. The average person's never heard of that. They don't know what it is. But basically, it means I help my company use our data, our information to solve problems and make decisions. So I'm guessing you guys are mostly on social media or you have some social media accounts. So think about that for a minute. What's going to show up in your feed? What posts get the most likes? What gets filtered out? What ads are coming in and being recommended to you? Well, that's all based on an algorithm. Well, the posts, your likes, your comments, the videos, that's all data. When we put that information together, it helps the company, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, it helps them figure out which ads to show you. It helps figure out what pops up to the top of your calendar or your feed. If you've ever shopped on Amazon and you've gotten a little thing that says, hey, you might like this, that's the data in the background. So I'm the orchestrator in the background for my company, which is not a social media company, but doing the same sort of thing. How do we take all of our data from all our different areas and help our leadership make the decision so that our company is successful?
Awesome. That sounds very interesting. I'm excited to learn more today. So, This is Joyce's view of the world of data. Before we talk about jobs, let's talk about what this world feels like. Joyce, can you walk us through a little peek into your day-to-day work environment or who you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So my job is an executive position. So I sit with the leadership suite. I never thought I would say that I would be an executive. Sometimes I wonder how I got here. But my days are busy. They're very busy. But we talked about balance earlier. So I prioritize my mornings with some quiet time. I block it on my calendar so that I can prioritize what's the big activity for the week and for the day. So that's always part of how my day goes. What decisions need to be made? What support does my team need? Who are we helping? What are those short-term and long-term projects? I hold office hours several times a week. So that's an open Teams call where anyone in the company can, because we're virtual, much like your class, we're a remote team. So I don't have an office. So I do office hours virtually. People can drop in. Hey, I don't understand this. Oh, can you help me with this? Where is this data? Can you help me solve this really hard problem for our customer? And so those office hours are just, they're they're an hour and it feels like a long time, but it's my favorite part of the week because people are coming and trusting me and my team to help them solve their problems. I do one-on-one meetings with my team because as their supervisors, their leader, I need to make sure that I'm empowering them to be successful and that they have a safe space where they can vent and get help. And then there's just lots of engagements. I have heads on, fingers on the keyboard where I'm actually doing data stuff, like bringing data together or creating a table where I put different information together, meeting with other leaders across the company to see what our priorities are. I write a lot of documents, so there's a lot of thought on if I'm writing something for the executives, that language versus if I'm writing something for an engineer, that language, or if I'm writing something for a newsletter article, what is the language that everybody can understand? So it's a really challenging. So I'm doing English as well as data. And so it's a really nice combination. So it's just like that on repeat, but the problems are always different and the people are always different. So it keeps it really engaging. It keeps it fun. And I have a great team, so that helps too. And we have a once a week meeting that is the first 15 minutes, we don't talk about work at all. The rule is we don't talk about work at all. We're not in an office. So we don't have the time to say, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? Like in the office. So we spend that first 15 minutes talking about what movie did you see? What food are you eating? What are you doing this weekend? And I think that really helps. And that's also one of the favorite parts of my week.
That's awesome. Thank you for breaking that down for us. It's very interesting, I think, to see a little bit of what your world looks like. So thank you for that. So, what words come to mind when you think of a career as a chief data officer? Students, go ahead and put in your thoughts, and then me and Miss Joyce, we can go over them after we have a couple come in. So, we'll give you guys a little bit to put in some thoughts and phrases and words. I think Miss Joyce, that there's a lot that come to my mind, and I was going to say technicals sounds like it's very fitting for this role. What would you say about that?
Absolutely. So when you think about it this way, so when you enroll in school, you have to fill out a form. That form has a bunch of data on it. It has your name, it has your grade level, it has your address, it has a lot of data on it. But maybe it's on a paper form, but that gets put into a system. That system is the technical enabler of that process of you enrolling. Well, then your teachers have to access that information to add grades. So they're adding more data. And maybe there's a different system that the state uses to see it. So now we've got that technical combination to answer questions based on you enrolling in school. And so you can start to see how some of those other things tie together as well. You have to have some technical understanding. You have to understand technology.
Technology leadership. I feel like being able to critique things as well is probably another big one.
Yes, I love that artificial intelligence is in the middle, right? So you guys are in a totally different world than what I grew up in. Although I will tell you that artificial intelligence has been around since the 50s. It didn't just come out with ChatGPT. It's a really interesting study. You guys should look up the history of artificial intelligence. It's been around for decades. But it's based on information and data, right? So if you have a table of data, again, enrolling in school, and you didn't fill out three pieces of that form, now those three pieces of information are missing. And when the artificial intelligence goes to give you an answer or help you with something, there's something missing. So the better that information is going in, the better that information is coming out, which is why you should never just trust artificial intelligence. You should always review it to make sure that the answer is right. So, and the data security ties to that too, right? You don't want to put your private information in. You want to keep that protected because there are artificial intelligence tools out there that are using that information that maybe other people will see. So you want to provide that security to make sure that everything is good. And that's critiquing, right? Being able to problem solve, look for gaps, look for things. I love the smart people. Look, you don't necessarily have to be smart naturally. You have to have a curiosity, a willingness to learn, a sense of adventure to try new things and be willing to not get it right the first time, but to keep trying.
Yes, awesome. Thank you for that breakdown. Very insightful. So, what should we explore first, students? Go ahead and drop a pin on the bingo card, and wherever the most votes land, we will start our journey. So, I will give you guys a second to read over all of these options. I think of what skills and or certifications are helpful. Sounds like this role is very intricate. So, I'll give you guys a little bit to put in, drop some pins on the bingo board, and we will start there. So we have give you guys a little bit longer. I guess let's start with what skills or certifications are helpful.
All right. So if you think about the role that I have, there's a lot of moving pieces. And within my discipline of data management is really what I'm doing, helping a company manage data. There are sub-disciplines. So some of the skills are, can you talk to people? It's really sounds crazy in a data field, but you have to be able to talk to people to understand what they need so you can help solve problems. Now, that's a soft skill. That's not necessarily something you go to school for, but it's a soft skill. You have to be able to figure out what is the problem, right? Don't just go to try and solve something if you don't actually know what the problem is you're solving. So really critical thinking skills, pulling something apart and figuring out what is the answer that I'm trying to get to? What is the problem I'm trying to solve? So that's also kind of an intangible. So what are some of the tangible stuff? So in my field, there's the theoretical skills and there's the technical skills. So theoretical skills are how do I manage the data? What processes belong to it? So data governance, data quality, those are types of skills you could have. But let's go on the technical side. Data science is all about math, mathematics, statistics. How do you mathematically display data, right? I had 100 classmates sign up, only 10 showed up. The percentages, the trends, predicting who's going to come, right? So mathematics is a really strong skill to have. And that's in a lot of jobs, not just data. Understanding so a data architect, so using how do you model, how do you visually represent data to tell a story? How knowing how that data puts together visually, whether you're doing a dashboard, you've seen bar charts and you've seen pie charts, right? Doing a dashboard, how do you visually tell that story? Versus how do you put it in a model so someone can build the back end in the technology so the data flows through the pipeline to go from this to this system combined together with this so you're getting that right answer. So technology skills, if you're thinking like Azure, or Amazon or Google. They have their own set of certifications on how to do things in their database environments, in their cloud environments. And so those are really good skills to have. Understanding how data is modeled and architected, mathematics, those would be ones I could say that you could go and look at. And within those are huge different opportunities in the data space. And those are some really good foundational things, theoretically intangible and technical, that you can look at across the space.
And I think it's also important that you talked about having those soft skills, right? In such a data-driven field, it's important to be able to also acquire those as well, probably for you to perform efficiently.
Absolutely.
All right, so on Tallo.com, you can take a career interest assessment that shows how your interests are connected to potential careers. So Tallo does this by aligning each career with different personality types that are listed on this slide. Students, go ahead and take a moment and choose which personalities that you think are top personalities for a career as a chief data officer. So I'll give you guys a little bit to touch base on this, being realistic, conventional. Joyce, would you agree with these as well?
Absolutely. Realistic is super important. Methodological. It's very methodical, right? You don't want to go to the end. It's very linear. Interesting that no one has picked investigative, right? Critical thinking, being able to pull apart a party. But I see the analytical and data driven, so maybe that's where it came from. What I will tell you is that every single one of these personalities can thrive in this field. Every single one of them. I use something out of every one of these every single day. I have to be practical. I am methodological on the realistic. You have to be observant to see what maybe people aren't saying, to hear what maybe they're not saying when you're trying to solve the problem. You have to be innovative and creative when you're trying to figure out, how do I solve this using data, right? What's that outside of the box thought? You definitely have to be convincing, because let me just tell you what, people don't want to change. They like the way they do things. I've always done it this way. This is the way I'm going to keep doing it. What's this AI stuff? I don't want to use this AI stuff. That's different. So you have to be persuasive and charismatic, because you have to engage with people of all different skill levels and backgrounds. And there are people who are resistant, and then there are people who are going to be, I'm all in. And you have to be able to maybe use those all in people to persuade the other people. And of course, social really helps, because it's a very collaborative space. You want to be able to work. So if you're any of these personalities, you can still be very successful in this career. I think it takes a little bit of all of them.
That's so awesome to hear that. And like I mentioned earlier, this field seems to be very intricate. So, like you said, it's important to be able to communicate across all groups to effectively get your point across. So, thank you for sharing that. So, everyone's career path is different. Take a look at these images and let us know which of these best describes your journey to becoming a chief data officer and why.
The absolute first one, right? So I wanted to be a physical therapist. And when I was graduating from high school, they only accepted 4 people a year into the physical therapy school. And I did not have enough confidence in myself to go to 4 years of school and then be told no. So from physical therapy, I went into structural engineering. So I got an associate's in structural engineering, very analytical, very detail oriented. I never was an engineer, but I used those skills that I learned there to figure out how to put things together, to figure out how to solve problems, how to build things from nothing. And I use the engineering analogy all the time. We build the foundation, we put the rebar in, that's strong data management, before we put up the drywall, before we put up the frame, before we put up the roof. Everybody just wants to build a 3,000 square foot home, but they don't want to do the work at the bottom, the foundation work. Then I joined the Army. Logistics. That's nothing to do with physical therapy or engineering. When I retired for the Army, I worked as a civilian for the Army for a while. I worked as a contractor for the Army as a while. So I have just literally gone I call myself an accidental chief data officer, because I don't have a data background, a formal data background, but everything I ever did has data. And so it definitely looks like the curly spaghetti at the bottom. Uh, and I think almost every career is kind of like that, especially today because technology is advancing so quickly. We have to be able to pivot. And I think from your first survey, it has to be something that you enjoy and find interesting. And
Mhm.
so sometimes that's the natural pivot that comes with staying true to yourself.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So, time for a pop quiz. Every career has obstacles. Which of these challenges showed up in Joyce's journey? So, students, go ahead and read these and go ahead and give us your thoughts. I think for me, I was going to say didn't feel talented enough. I feel like it's very easy to probably get overwhelmed and maybe a little bit even discouraged with having all these, like you said, technologies advancing. Well, but what are your thoughts on that?
To me,
Yes.
so I will tell you those two are really true. All of these, you guys are spot on. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this phrase called imposter syndrome. So I told you I never thought I would be an executive. Me, I'm just me. So there are times when I'm even in a room and there are people who are so smart on something and I'm like, I don't know that. But then I go and learn enough to be at least so I can carry on an intelligent conversation. I do not have to be the expert in everything to be successful at my job, but I have to be willing to learn and connect with those that are. I never know what the next steps are because things are changing so quick. I stay at a position, I give it my very best. And then I've been really fortunate that those next steps, they've naturally come because I stay connected with people, because I try to learn new things. But imposter syndrome is really like where you absolutely know what you're doing. You're absolutely where you're supposed to be. You're the right person for the role. But these things right here don't feel talented enough, not sure, felt behind. You're in this room. Should I be here? Am I an imposter? But I'm just going to tell you those are normal feelings. The confidence comes more and more as you continue to grow, and it's okay to feel these things. It's completely normal. And just keep learning and just keep trying and be okay with, I don't know this, I'm going to learn it. Uh, but you don't have to learn everything. It's just so cool. It's just a really, my biggest challenge, honestly, is not necessarily on this. It was getting in my own way.
I was
It
going to
was
say it's probably important to be, or I bet it's a skill that you've had to adapt to be very level-headed. That's the word that I think of when it comes to this.
absolutely. I'm a talker. You probably figured that out. I like people. And sometimes you just have to be quiet and listen. And so I think that's a really important skill. That was a challenge that in my self-assessments, you have to listen in order to hear. And so that's a challenge I work on with my own personal self every day. I'm way better than I was when I was younger, but it's still something I look at every day.
It's so impactful to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. So along the path to building a career as a chief data officer, you probably needed some kind of training or help or some kind of support. What do you think actually helped the most? So, if you could honestly go ahead and help us and tell us about maybe some tools or softwares that you've used to get you to where you are today.
Absolutely. So there is several products out there that are specifically designed to help you learn. So I saw in the chat that you guys are doing some CompTIA training, and that's really cool. I will tell you, I took the Security Plus training, and one of the hardest ones I've ever taken in my career. You have to learn a lot, but there's a lot of products out there these days that are virtual that help you learn. So Data Camp is my number one favorite. I love Data Camp. It is an online course. It has tons and tons of courses across all the different data disciplines. It's gamified. You can score points. There's a leaderboard. There are challenges. They have a sandbox where you can practice. So I think that's really cool. That's one of them. There's many of them. That happens to be my favorite one. But there's Udacity and Udemy and Coursera and LinkedIn Learning. There's a lot. You can just Google it. There are so many, but Data Camp is my favorite. I belong to some groups. I belong to Women in Data. I belong to Women in Technology. So finding a network of people that are going through the same thing as you gives you some mentorship. but you also learn from them, so you're getting some informal education. So I think those two things would be finding a product or an opportunity that fits you, whether it's a college class, whether it's a something like data camp, and then finding a group that you can belong to of people going through the same sort of thing. And lots of universities have clubs that do that. There are lots of opportunities out there. Give you that support network so you're not going through it by yourself.
I think one of the options is finding a mentor. Did you have anyone that you looked up to or someone that you learned that was above you at the time?
Yes, mentors are something you should always. So in the Army, we say in your kit bag because pilots carry a little green bag that is their kit bag for their helmet and all their stuff that they wear when they fly. Now, I wasn't a pilot, but it's just a phrase we use in the Army. What's in your kit bag, right? So, what are the tools that you need to be successful? And a mentor. Now, a mentor doesn't have to be necessarily someone who's above you. A mentor can be someone that's parallel and even sometimes someone junior if they're in a different field who know more than you. But I have in my career different mentors at different parts of my career where they were there for just a short amount of time and then naturally we moved on. And then I have two mentors that have been with me for probably longer than you guys have been alive that have seen me through different seasons of my life, that have become friends, that have become people I truly respect. And now it's a two-way street because we mentor each other in different ways. So mentorship, finding that mentor or a trusted confidant that you can vent to and bounce ideas off of and get, it's such an exceptional tool to put in your kit bag.
Yes, and I actually appreciate that you highlighted that it doesn't have to be someone above you. I think you can learn just as much from someone that's parallel and from your peers that are your same age, right? So it's super important that you touched base on that. So everyone ask, what will I make? And you can find this information by going to tallo.com and checking out the Career Navigator. So based on Tallo's Career Navigator, the median US salary for a chief data officer is 156,000. Your pay can be higher or lower based on location, your experience, the industry that you choose to go in. But money matters, but so do the hours that you work, the time you get off, the growth opportunities that are available within this career, and whether the job fits your lifestyle. So I know earlier we talked about the work-life balance. Have you been able to find that work-life balance, Miss Joyce?
Oh, so I work for the most amazing company. So my company is an employee-owned company. So that's different than many other companies out there, right? We're not owned by a hedge fund or an investment group as employees own the company. Our number one value is employees come first. So our benefit package is amazing. Our work schedule is really good and we have top-notch paid time off, right? But that hasn't always been the case. I've worked for other companies that was not the same. And I wouldn't say they were amazing. So it is very important to find what works for you. I like to say that I'm a recovering workaholic. I enjoy what I do, and my children have grown and have their own families. So I have a lot of time. So I'll be working and I'll look up and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's way past the end of the day. But then there are other days I'm like, nope, I'm done. I'm going to the park. So it's really finding a balance between that. Do not get to the stage of being a recovering workaholic. It is important to prioritize that time off. But there are times on a weekend where I'll take a certification course because then I don't have meetings and no disruption and I can just really focus on it because I still want to learn. I want to learn new things that aren't necessarily happening in my day-to-day job. So it's finding what works for you, works for where you're at. I will tell you that I don't know a single chief data officer that tops out at 156. I would say that it probably makes more than that. But you don't just walk into a chief data officer job, right? That's after years. You have to be a data scientist. You have to be a data governance lead. You have to be a data governance, a data quality person. You have to work your career to get to there. This is a high-end job, so there are feeder jobs that go into it, which is why they make more money because you're responsible for all the company stuff, not just a portion of it. But it is a very nice job. But when I started my job, now it's hard for you guys to adjust to this because of inflation and stuff. But I just hired a data engineer, and his starting salary is in your third bucket of coins. And he has 8 years of experience. So that just to give you a little bit of feel of current. And the data engineer is the one who builds the technical pipelines that the data goes through the different systems to get to the final destination.
Awesome. Thank you for walking us through that. That's awesome to hear. So, what can I do to learn more about this career now? Students, go ahead and put in your thoughts, and we can talk about some of these as well. Try a class or project. We have interviewing a professional. I think that would be a great first step. Explore this career on Tallo, of course. We mentioned earlier, Miss Joyce, I think interviewing a professional, we talked about having the mentors and people that you can learn from. Do you feel like that's a good first step to take?
I think so. I almost think this starting with finding a professional in this field, and then they can connect you to a greater network or other teams.
Mm,
But you could also do it the other way around. You can look to see if there are any clubs or groups that are open to folks in your age. A lot of times schools have them already. Or maybe you start a data club. Maybe you are the person who starts it and it grows from there and people naturally come together. But finding a professional that could give you guidance that's willing to, and it doesn't have to be a chief data officer, someone in that data field. I think that one would be probably one of the top. And volunteering, that's a good one too.
it is. Awesome. All right, so students, now that you've learned a little more about what a chief data officer does and Joyce's journey to get there, what's the most valuable thing that you have learned so far? We have talked about a lot. Life balance, yes. I think that's super important. I'll give you guys a little bit longer to also put in some of your thoughts. I think Miss Joyce also did a good job at breaking down everything that goes into your career. Being smart with your choices, yes.
So I'm going to add something. I want to flip it
Yeah.
on. Let's change it to life work balance. Because when you go into it with that mindset, you're not going to work your whole entire life, but you're going to live your whole entire life.
I like that.
So
Keep learning. I feel like there's always something to probably learn, right? Confidence is key. I feel like confidence is definitely a big one that you have to really touch down on and being able to stay level-headed within this career. Don't give up. Those are all awesome. So we are going to see if we have any students or any questions from the students. So we have one, not a question, but being a woman in the Army/Air Force is very motivating. I love that for you.
me too.
That's
So I was in the Army, not the Air Force, but resilience and identity. So when I joined, only 2% of the Army were females. So I could literally be in a room with just all guys, right? Most of my career, the first 10 years of my career, there were very few women in the Army. So what that meant is I had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. It meant that I had to be willing to do things that were exceptionally uncomfortable, physically and emotionally. So don't give up. That's the resilience. But also don't, it took me a little while to learn it, but you have to stay true to who you are because if you keep shifting to fit in, then you feel like you've lost a piece of yourself. So I would say if you know who you are, stay true to who that is. Now, mind you, I am a lot older than you guys probably think. So when I joined the Army, things were a lot different in society than they are now. Things weren't as accepting. So it taught me how to be resilient, but I would not trade I wouldn't trade anything for it. It was the most confidence building, I did things I never thought I could do. I went on 20-mile road marches. I rappelled off the side of towers. I've done just some really amazing things and met some amazing people. So it taught me just to be true to myself and try hard things.
That's awesome to hear. It's very motivating too. Thank you. All right, we'll go to the next question. Where is your favorite place that you've traveled?
Oh, Germany, without a doubt. Well, I lived in Germany as a child with my parents in the Air Force. So here, real quick, I lived there, and I'm just going to show you how old I am. I lived there as a child in the 70s. I was stationed there in the 80s where I had my daughter. I went back to Germany in the late 90s and early 2000s. I went back in 2011 for work. So I have gone to Germany many times in my life, every decade for multiple decades. And I say Germany, and just anywhere in Germany has been my favorite, followed closely by Disney World, which I will be going to next week. And next up is Ireland on my list. So I've not been there yet, so I continue to travel. I think it's important to expand your horizons. And one more is the Haleakala National Park on Maui is probably the most spectacular single view I've ever had in my whole life.
That's awesome. Wow, you being able to travel and your career, I guess it allows you to do that, right?
It does. I
Super fulfilling.
travel quite a bit for work. I speak at conferences, and so they let me go to different places. It's really cool.
That's so awesome. What are some positions below yours to getting started in data?
That's amazing. We are actually doing internship interviews right now. So we completed an intern I'm hiring three interns. So one is a data modeler. And so we're hiring people in their senior year of college who are interested in creating those technical models of what the data looks like, right? How does it fit together so that our engineer and architect can build out the systems inside. We're hiring a data analyst. So they're the ones who look at it and say, how does this fit together? And visualize it in a tool called Power BI. So how do we take just data and turn it into a picture that tells a story? And we're hiring an intern in information management. So data is like rows and tables and columns, right? Like a database. Think Excel like that, where it's all tied together. But information is like when you put multiple pieces of information together for a certain thing. That piece of paper you fill out to your enrollment record that has all this different information on it. So we're hiring three different interns in that. Last year we hired a data engineer. We have some data scientists interns in another section. So there's data science, data engineering, mathematicians, business analytics. Those are all positions below that companies do internships in when you're in college to help you get a feel to see, oh, no, I don't really like that, or, oh, I love this. So,
Yes. That's why internships are so important. 'Cause that's the first real, I guess, you being immersed into what the world actually is like. So, thank you for sharing that. All right. What data are you looking at?
so we look at HR data. So what do you need to know about an employee? Their age, their address, their pay grade, the salary level, the who do they work for? Who is their supervisor? What is their training level? What is their education? What is all the stuff you need to know about an employee? So everything in the HR, human resources world of things you would need to know about an employee. We look at finance data. When do they get paid? How often do they get paid? How much do they get paid? Did they travel? Do you reimburse them for the travel? Did they get a promotion? Are they getting a bonus? So all the finance stuff. Now we've just tied all that financial data to that employee data. We look at all of our contracts. We support different customers. We support the Air Force, the Army, the Missile Defense Agency, the FBI. We support a lot of different companies. Which contract are they working on? What work are they doing? What skills do they have? What are they doing for the customer? So that's what we look at internally. Lots more, but those are three really good examples. But then we also help our customers. So think, for example, we support the Missile Defense Agency and they're building and we're helping them figure out how to engineer missiles. So not me, but people in our company are helping build missiles. or we're helping build autonomous systems like drones. So all that different kind of stuff. You can look our company up on the internet. It'll show you all the really cool stuff that people do in data. I focus on the inside the company data and then help the rest of the team help our customers focus on their data. But if you can ask a question about it in a company, that's the kind of data we're looking at. How much money did we earn? What is our profit? What is our predicted profit? Things like that.
Wow. Sounds like a lot to it. Okay, awesome. So I have one final question. If you could go back in time and give career advice to your middle or high school self, what would you say?
Oh, I would say I'm more interested in it. I don't know that. So it didn't even exist when I was in high school, this position. People didn't realize how important data was when everything got a lot more automated, right?
Awesome. All right. So before we wrap up, we just ask you to rate today's session. Students, are you more interested in this career path or less interested? Maybe your interest hasn't changed, but hopefully you did learn something today. If you have any more questions about this career, you can explore more data and tech career paths at tallo.com. Joyce, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. You explained it very well. Now I have a better understanding, so students, hopefully you do as well. But remember, no two journeys look the same, and your path won't be a copy of anyone else's. It will be yours, and that's what's important. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep staying curious about different job fields, and there's no single right way to build a career, only the one that you choose to create. So, we will be back with another story from a completely different world because the more paths you explore, you will begin to see the more possibilities for yourself, students. So, stay motivated and stay encouraged. Thank you so much again, Joyce.
Thank you.